We have the children, please. Okay, good morning, children.
Good morning.
I've got very difficult questions for you today. You think I have?
I'm saying go on.
Okay. All right, let's see. Which of these children is better? Is he better or he better? Not for you to answer. You can't. You had a question, you had an answer.
Mom, everybody's special.
Everybody's special. Okay, you just blew my whole service. Okay, that's great. That was a very, very good answer. You're a very smart girl. Okay, neither one of them is better. So, then I was going to go on and I was going to say compare one of you, the older ones, to the younger ones, or one of you children is to one of the adults in the congregation, and say which one is better, and the answer is pretty much always the same. How do you think God looks at people? Do you think He looks at all people the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So no difference. What about a rich man and a poor man? Would God love one more than the other?
No.
No. Okay, well, you already got that very strict. Going to be a very short children's sermon. You know the answers. Thank you. Give them a hand. Chapter St. Luke, beginning at the first verse. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of the leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, "Give this person your place." And then in disgrace he would start to take the lowest place. When you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, "Friend, move up higher." Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your neighbors, in case they invite you in return and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. As we read the gospel lesson this morning, It looks a little complicated because in that short gospel lesson, we could have three major themes. Three things that we could spend not only the whole sermon on, but a lecture that would probably go on and on for days. The first has to deal with a lesson in humility, pride and humility, and the value of humility over those that are proud. The second talks about, as a mandate, not to forget the poor, because it is our task as those who are more privileged to recognize that because we have that, because we are somehow endowed with something more than everybody else, we have to care for those who aren't as gifted as we are. And then there's a third theme there at the very last verse, which probably isn't very attractive to Lutherans. Certainly Luther wouldn't have liked it. But it says, after it talks about being good to the poor, it says, "And you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." Jesus does that more than once, where he talks about the fact that there will be an accounting of your life and your responsibilities on the last day. We try to skip over those as Lutherans because we say man is saved by grace alone, and that's true. But that doesn't mean there isn't some kind of accounting in terms of God's eyes for what you were given and what he expects in turn for you in terms of your life's sacrifices. As I said, all three of those themes could run a whole sermon or for many days. And when we look at this text, it's a little unnerving, I think, because it almost looks like Jesus comes and is an unappreciative guest. He stands there making judgments on the social structure of Israel, as well as informing the host who has made a dinner for him and had him as a special guest after a performance in the synagogue. He tells them what he ought to do next time. Don't invite all these people. These are all A-list people in your city of Jerusalem, and actually they're either relatives or friends or people with influence, and they'll all repay you. You'll all get to come back to their place, and it'll all be washed out. So what good is this? Next time you have a feast, you invite the poor and the crippled and those that have all kinds of issues, not people that can repay you. Now, do you think if Jesus came to one of your family reunions or a graduation service or any kind of event that you planned for a number of people and said, forget about these guests, they're all your friends or relatives, people you know, someone that can influence you in terms of the public. But next time, go downtown, get all the homeless, and bring them up, and you celebrate the graduation with them. You think you'd respond to that? You think the host really appreciated that comment on that because he was giving a party for him as well as for the rest of the people in the neighborhood? He should be condemned for what he was doing? Well, you can get sideways on any of these texts if you want. But the reality is that Jesus wanted to make some kind of moral story that stuck. And it always seemed to run counter to what people believed or felt or practiced. So I'm not going to deal with the whole text, but I want to deal with this whole issue of showing preference to the elite and cause of humility. To get a hold on the text, when people were invited to a party in anybody's house, there was a pecking order. The host and his wife, or the hostess and her husband, would be sitting at a central point. And there would be benches, not like pews, but benches, flat benches, and they would go in order, and some with closer proximity to the guests or to the host, and some farther away. And the ones who were more important, the ones who the host really thought could help him in his life or as an influence, they would sit closer. And people jostled with each other for these positions. And Jesus is simply making a point. Look at these people. What they're really concerned about, what they really came for, is to get the closest place in the household to show how important they were. And this is what happens in your normal activities. You always try to position yourself in the best place. And that's not the way of a Christian. The way of a Christian is to sit back, not to take the glory, not to show himself as the most important one, but one who is a servant. One who is not concerned about sitting closest to the host. I think one of the best parables that I've ever seen on this particular topic comes from Dr. Seuss. How many of you are familiar with Dr. Seuss? Quite a few. Have you ever heard about the Sneeches on the beaches? For those who haven't, it is one of the most colorful stories that Dr. Seuss has. And talk about, got scriptural content. He talks about this group of people that is Sneeches, who are sitting on the beach, and they're all having fun. They're all in peace. They all seem to be really in a good place. But there comes a charlatan, a man by the same name of Sylvester McPherson McBean. And he doesn't like what he sees. Or better yet, he sees a way to make a profit. So he takes a group of those Sneeches and he takes them off to the side, and he has what he calls the star-on machine. And he tells them, I've got a machine that will help you differentiate yourself, you people, from these people, because that will make you people great. And what we will do, you run through the machine and there will be put a little something on your chest, and a star on your chest, and you will be the more important. And so he does this, and they go through the machine, and they go across the beach proudly proclaiming they are the best Sneeches on the beach. Well, this really irritates the other bunch. They don't like to be lesser Sneeches. And so they come to McPherson McBean and they said, those people are real snooty and uppity, and they really aren't the best Sneeches on the beaches. We're better. He says, okay. So, well, we'll just put stars in yards. So they go through the star-on machine, and they all come up with stars, and they go together and see, we're just as important as you are. Well, the first group runs back, says to McPherson McBean, how can you do this? We need to distinguish ourselves because we are the best Sneeches. And he says, okay, well, now the star-on machine will become a star-off machine. We'll go in, we'll remove the star, and then you will be the best Sneeches because you will be like you were originally. And they have altered themselves. And so this keeps going on and on and on and on. And of course, there's always a group fighting against each other. And the only one that benefits is McPherson McBean. Now, isn't that a real copy of society, the way we operate? Just lately, and it's become a big thing now. Some of the A-listers in the movies are saying, we've got to stop this better than you thing that Hollywood is in. Because the last weddings with the real high A-listers is getting not in the $1 million, but in the millions of dollars. And one of those A-listers came out a week ago and made this statement. He said, after we got done with that wedding, he said, I was thinking how ungracious I am, and how much this could have helped some of the starving people in Africa. And I just sit here and just spend it on myself because I want to be important. I want to be with these people. Maybe we've got the wrong idea. Now I'm thinking, if that catches hold, and somebody does go and say, I'm having a wedding, but it's just the two of us, we're going to spend $1 million on this project in the inner city or this project, then the next will come along and say, we'll spend more on another project. And wouldn't it be nice if that kind of got going? But it nevertheless is a contest of trying to be the best Sneech on the beach. Now, this actually happened in a small degree at my son's, well, it was the pre-wedding dinner. And they asked me to pay for it, and they were going to rent a hall that was like $5,000-$6,000. Said, I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to even rent a room, one of those places, hospitality things in a hotel, because they're too expensive and it doesn't make any sense. What's the point? It's just a group of us that know each other anyway. Why do we need to go there? Some people thought I was thrifty. That's not exactly the word they used, but they thought I was thrifty. And they said, where do you think we should have it? And I said, I think we should have it in the park. Make a little potluck and everybody bring something, and we'll have it in the park. And that's what they did. I was not the most popular person there. However, we were sitting there, and over the period of time, which was about an hour and a half of this dinner, 3 homeless people came and wished the bride and groom success and a good life, and we fed them. Now, I had some extra, I can't remember what it was, but I gave some of them mine. And some people say, well, he is very generous. It really wasn't. And I was trying to make myself appear good. But it wasn't a lot different that when I didn't get something I liked at the table at home, I called off over the dog, and when my mother wasn't looking, I'd feed the dog and pretend that I ate. And I said, this is just another act of self-righteousness in my own eyes. See, even when you appear to be generous, we really do practice this whole thing of being the best Sneech on the beach. That will never change. However, there is one important place that I think is really important to forget that we want to be the best Sneech. And that happens when we come to church. When we proclaim our Christianity. When we try to be a witness for Almighty God, that's when it's not important. That's when it is important to not try to be the best Sneech on the beach, to fall in the circle. In the history of Christianity, that has always been a problem. When we went to the churches, those state churches in Norway, was one thing that really irritated me, and that was that all the seats were assigned. Now I know we could just about do that in this church, but they aren't assigned. Somebody could come and take your place. But in those churches, the way the seats were assigned is according to your giving, according to your financial status. And the place you really wanted to be was to be in the balcony where there was a curtain, where you could eat or drink while you were watching the sermon and not pay any attention, or just be playing cards or whatever you wanted to do on Sunday morning and nobody could see you. But it was the place of honor. There were many churches in early America who came here for religious tolerance and religious freedom because they were oppressed by state churches. And one of the things they did is they set up a pecking order for those that were more generous givers and those that were less generous. The ones immediately closest to the pulpit or pastor would be the ones who were held in honor because of their giving. That was obviously not a Norwegian church. It must have been the back rows that were important for them. But there was a pecking order. And in the church, Jesus fought against the Pharisees and the Sadducees because they practiced this sneech on the beach to the ultimate. And actually, that person that gave Jesus that invitation to come and have the meal that's recorded in the text invited him because, first of all, it was a mark of honor to have the person that spoke at the synagogue at your house. But secondly, it said that they wanted to keep their eyes on him because if they could get anything against him, if he did something on the Sabbath day that they didn't feel he should, then they could criticize him and take his nobility away. I go to a couple of different meetings of church bodies. And one of the things that disturbs me more than anything is whatever one I go to, they're critical of another. And sometimes now I've actually gone up and said, this has to stop. This can't be. I know you disagree with them, but you can't run down other Christians. And somebody just yesterday told me a joke, a baptismal joke of they were one religion when they were 1 day old, these kittens, but when they got 3 days and opened their eyes, they changed faith. And for the first time, I felt myself really kind of repulsed at that joke. Because we need to support each other. And we are so often to go to the McPhersons and McBeans of our society. Just put a star on ours so we can say, we're special, we're the best Sneeches on the beaches. And the overwhelming message of the text this morning is in the kingdom of God, there are no best Sneeches on the beaches. The children seem to have it nailed down this morning, didn't they? I hope it always remains a major part of their faith. Amen. Sermon hymn is 42, Hear, O Lord, I raise my voice.